Why Did It Have to Be You? By Rolvani is a captivating fanfiction that masterfully blends humor, romance, and the unexpected. The story follows Atsushi, who, feeling a bit lonely, is persuaded by his well-meaning colleagues to try a dating app. The twist? His blind date turns out to be someone completely unforeseen, leading to a series of delightful and heartwarming events. Rolvani's engaging writing style and ability to craft realistic, relatable characters make this fic a must-read. The narrative is filled with witty dialogue, genuine emotions, and surprising turns that keep readers hooked from beginning to end. If you're looking for a story that combines the thrill of romance with the charm of unexpected encounters, this is the perfect read for you. Also, this sets up a whole new dynamic to Akutagawa's personal relationships within the port mafia. When he asks Higuchi what it means to have romantic feelings for someone, I was veering between absolute horror and second-hand embarrassment. My boy has no real concept of the feelings of those around him, and this illustrates that perfectly. The fact that this is set between the end of Season 3 and the beginning of the Decay of Angels arc also makes me fearful for them, knowing that their world is about to be torn apart very soon.
And now, some of my favorite parts.
Atsushi tried to work out how this had come to pass, as he stole quick glances at his apparent dining partner. Never, in his time since joining the armed detective agency, did Atsushi think he would end up in a situation like this. How did this dumb app match them up? They had to be the most incompatible pair that could be matched up. Atsushi was taken out of his head by their waiter arriving. "What can I get for you two?" he asked cheerily. Akutagawa quickly ordered his own meal, which ended up being one of the most expensive dishes on the entire menu. He then glared at Atsushi, demanding, "What do you want, Jinko?" He turned to the waiter and asked for a small green salad, to which Akutagawa reacted with a loud scoff. "Why are you ordering that? It won't be enough for you." "I'm kind of on a budget, Akutagawa," he responded. "Not all of us have port mafia money." He heard a soft gasp from their waiter that they both ignored. Akutagawa was silent in contemplation for a moment before saying, "Well then, just order whatever you want. I'll pay for it." You don't have to do that," Atsushi protested before he was cut off again. "Nonsense. How can I kill you in 4 months if you've starved to death?" Their waiter gasped again. "I won't starve. Just order," Akutagawa demanded with a strong glare. Atsushi rolled his eyes and looked back to the menu, picking out a nice meal for himself. As the waiter left, he looked at the man across from him. "Thanksy," he begrudgingly let out. Akutagawa grunted in response. They sat in awkward silence for a few minutes. Akutagawa had his arms crossed, glaring at different parts of the restaurant. Atsushi continued to give him a confused look, still wondering how exactly this happened. Eventually, Atsushi decided that he would be the one to break the awkward silence again. "So, why did you decide to come here?" His dining partner quickly shifted from looking at a couple a few tables over to staring him down. "You don't exactly seem the dating type." "It wasn't exactly my idea. I was persuaded to try this out by someone." Atsushi gave him a look. "Was it Dazai-san?" Akutagawa glared at him before looking off to the side, quietly saying, "Yes." Atsushi huffed out a short laugh, which earned him an even deeper glare from Akutagawa, who looked like he would have strangled him if he didn't get into a coughing fit at that moment. He watched as his rival sat there, sounding like he was coughing up a lung. Akutagawa slowly reached in front of him, grabbing the glass of water and taking a sip. When he finally stopped, he returned to glaring as he put his glass of water back on the table. Atsushi watched for a moment before deciding to risk his life yet again with another question. Why do always do what Dazai-san asks of you anyway? Don't be an idiot. You know why. Do you really think that going on a blind date will give you his recognition? Atsushi watched as his rival sat uncomfortably in his chair. How should I know how that brain of his works? He angrily replied. Why'd you come here anyway, Jinko? The others at the agency kind of forced me into it. Akutagawa gave him a bewildered look. And you just let them force you into this? Atsushi shrugged. I just figured, why not go? I didn't really think I'd get anything out of this date anyway. And since my date turned out to be you, I guess I was right. Atsushi realized what he said after he said it and quickly covered his mouth with his hand. He watched as Akutagawa's face froze from his frankly rude comments and dreaded how he would react. To his surprise, he merely let out a small laugh. That was funny. Atsushi's eyebrows creased as he wondered why he wasn't just killed on the spot. Akutagawa has a sense of humor? Why are you looking at me like that? Akutagawa asked, interrupting Atsushi's chain of thoughts. Nothing. Akutagawa gave him a curious look before clearing his throat to speak again. I assume you've been training for our fight in 4 months. Why's he bringing this up again? Yeah, of course I have. Dying isn't exactly part of my plan. The man across from him scoffed. And I don't plan on losing. He let a brief moment go by before he opened his mouth again. A bit quieter and a lot less assertive this time. And I've kept my side of the deal as well, so you better not disappoint me. Atsushi's eyes went wide. That honestly didn't even sound like Akutagawa. You haven't killed anyone? I keep my promises, he simply replied. Atsushi knew this, of course, but he was still shocked that his rival had actually refrained from killing. He didn't think it was physically possible for him. Thank you, Akutagawa, he softly said, and I won't be going easy on you either. Akutagawa smirked in reply. There was a brief moment of silence before Atsushi decided to break it again. There's just one thing I don't really understand, though, he began. Isn't that normal for you? Hey, shut up, Atsushi grunted in reply. I mean, I know that you need to prove that you're stronger, but why do you need to prove that? And why against me? Akutagawa huffed and turned to the side. That's none of your business. Well, if it's the reason that you're going to be trying to kill me, then I do think it's my business. Akutagawa sat there, avoiding looking over at his dining partner. Atsushi could tell he was deep in thought just from watching the journey his face was taking. I need to prove that I'm stronger. That's the only way that I'll have V-value. Atsushi gave him a confused look. Are you serious? Yes, I'm serious. He snapped back. Growing up, if I wasn't strong, that meant I'd die. It was true in the slums, and it's true in the port mafia. Atsushi noticed some heads turn at the mention of the organization, but they quickly returned to their own conversations. In this world, it's a survival of the fittest. And I need to prove that I'm the fittest by defeating you. Atsushi blinked at him after listening to his speech. For some reason, Atsushi had never really thought about Akutagawa's time growing up. He knew that he grew up as an orphan in the slums, but it had never clued in for him the type of mindset that could give a person. Are you going to say something, or are you going to just keep sitting there with that dumb look on your face? Akutagawa asked suddenly, cutting into Atsushi's train of thought. Maybe acting like a total asshole all the time is why people don't like you, Atsushi replied, glad to be reminded of his rival's true nature after briefly almost empathizing with him. Please, I get along just fine with my colleagues. It's only you. The man was cut off from whatever he was about to say by their food arriving slightly early. It was likely on purpose, too. The staff most likely wanted them out of their restaurant as soon as possible. The two ate their meal in relative silence. Atsushi savored every bite, it being the first time he'd eaten something that didn't come out of a microwave in a few weeks. He also noticed that Akutagawa was taking his time as well, realizing that he probably didn't have many chances to eat food like this growing up either. Atsushi also managed to catch him briefly, watching him eat with an indecipherable look on his face a few times. Although every time he would look back, Akutagawa would quickly look the other way. Atsushi gave him a curious look, but ignored it. He had a feeling that pursuing whatever that was would not end well. It was almost dusk, and Atsushi was sitting on a bench overlooking the harbor, letting the sea breeze blow through his hair. He liked to go here every once in a while, just to be alone and help clear his head. For some reason, his mind couldn't help but keep going back to his not date with Akutagawa. There was something that he just kept playing over in his mind. First of all, his rival had decided to uphold his side of their deal, not killing anyone since they had last seen each other. Of course, Atsushi had trusted that he would, but at the same time, Akutagawa and murder were so closely related to one another in Atsushi's mind that the idea that he could be just stop seemed impossible. There was also the way that he had briefly talked about his upbringing in the mafia. Logically, it made sense that Akutagawa would have had a rough upbringing, just like him. But for some reason, that fact did not seem to mesh with his image of the mafioso. Atsushi knew that he had some crazed desire to be stronger, to be recognized by Dazai for that strength, but he had never put any thought into why he had that desire. To be taught from a young age that he would only have value if he could be strong and useful. Atsushi resented the fact that he found himself starting to relate to Akutagawa. Atsushi sighed, leaned back against the bench. He'd never admit this to the others at the office, but he actually did kind of hope that he could have met someone nice on his date. Maybe he didn't really expect that he could find someone out there to actually love him, but maybe just a person to help keep the lonely feeling away at night. Instead, he was stuck with Akutagawa, and Atsushi did not want to imagine evening being friends with him, let alone doing any of Tatat's stuff. Atsushi quickly shook his head, trying to get rid of the image that his brain had just supplied him. As he did, he heard a very familiar cough come from behind him. He slowly turned his head and caught the current object of all his thoughts standing there. "Akutagawa," he yelled, suddenly going tense and jumping to his feet. "Calm yourself, Jinko. I have no ambition to fight you right now," the mafioso replied, barely even glancing at him. Atsushi sat back on the bench but remained tense. "What are you doing here, then?" "Last I checked, this was a public area. You're not the only one who enjoys it here." "Oh," Atsushi replied, slowly turning away from his rival. He tried to go back to relaxing, but he found it a little difficult to do so all of a sudden. He turned back and saw Akutagawa still standing there. He decided to speak up, considering his peaceful evenings seemed to have ended early. I think there is something I should tell you, by the way. If it's about Dazai-san knowing about our unfortunate evening together, I'm already aware. Atsushi blinked at him. Oh, did he come to talk to you about it? Akutagawa gritted his teeth and answered, Yes, what did you tell him? Otagawa rolled his eyes before replying, I told him that it was a terrible experience that I regretted immensely. Atsushi scowled back at him. Well, the feeling is mutual, he said, as he turned back to look out at the harbor. He anxiously tapped his foot, telling himself to calm down and forget about the man standing just a few feet away before he turned back to him and asked, How did Dazai even convince you to go on a date? I didn't even think you were the kind of person who was even interested in, dating. Akutagawa glared at him from the corner of his eye. I agreed because Dazai said that having a partner might help make me stronger, he quietly answered through gritted teeth. Atsushi raised his eyebrows. How would that work? Akutagawa sighed. He said that having a boyfriend could help me focus more in battle, someone who could take care of my emotional and physical needs. Atsushi watched his rival, puzzled. He had never seen the man nervous before. It was really weird. Clearly he didn't know how to talk about these kinds of topics. Atsushi couldn't look down on him for that, though. He was also painfully inexperienced in the area of dating. Akutagawa coughed into his hand, before looking over and asking his own question. And why is it that you would even allow your colleagues to convince you to go on a date if you were so sure that you could never find someone to love you? His tone was completely flat, not a hint of malice in it. Yet it somehow managed to hit Atsushi right in the gut. He gaped at the mafioso who just sat there, watching him expectantly. Atsushi started before realizing he didn't even really know the answer. I guess I was just feeling kind of lonely, I don't know. I've never really been with anyone, so. Akutagawa seemed to be thinking about what he had said. And you still think yourself incapable of being loathed? Atsushi froze before slowly nodding his head. The mafioso sighed. Listen up, Jinko. You won't be able to cure that loneliness within you until you learn to stop pitying yourself like that because of your past. Atsushi blinked after taking in his advice. He was lost for words but saw that Akutagawa was clearly waiting for him to say something. When did you become an expert on romance? Akutagawa rolled his eyes again. I told you when we fought Fitzgerald that your past does not define your current self. The same still applies here. I assume that any advice that is successful in battle would also be successful in romance. Okay. And why is it that you've decided to give me advice on my love life? Akutagawa turned away from him to look out at the harbor. Dazai-san seemed a little too excited about our evening together. If I were to make an assumption, I'd say he's planning to have us team up again in the near future and thinks that us connecting would help us work well as a team. I would rather not disappoint him, and unfortunately that means I'll be needing to make sure you're in your best position to help as well, physically and mentally. Atsushi rolled what he had just been told around in his head. Looks like he was in for another mission full of bickering and almost murders with the man he had just been on a not date with. He was about to say something when his stomach growled loudly. Akutagawa looked over at him. Have you eaten recently? I had a small microwave dinner like 2 hours ago, Atsushi shyly replied. Akutagawa looked like he was contemplating something before he started marching towards where his rival was sitting. "Hey, what are you?" Atsushi started asking before Akutagawa grabbed his collar and pulled him off the bench, dragging him along as he marched away from the harbor. "What are you doing?" Atsushi loudly protested. "I will not fight alongside someone who could fall over at any moment from malnourishment," he replied, without even glancing at him. "There's a ramen shop nearby. We'll go there." "Well, I can walk myself there, you know." Atsushi was sure that the heels of his shoes would be ruined from getting dragged against the pavement. Akutagawa sighed and let go of Atsushi's collar, who quickly got to his feet and walked next to him in silence. It was almost dusk.
All right, hope you enjoyed that one. Thanks for watching. And as always, dare to be unique. We'll see you in the next one, which hopefully will be out tomorrow.